Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. For Victoria Sterling, it would come from a night security guard who knew more about healing than she could ever imagine. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that would change everything. Victoria Sterling sat in her corner office on the 47th floor of Chicago's Willis Tower, the city sprawling endlessly below her like a circuit board of dreams and ambitions. At 35, she had built Morning Rise Capital from nothing, a fintech company that democratized investing for middle-class Americans. 8 years of her life, countless 16-hour days, and every ounce of her brilliance poured into algorithms that helped ordinary families build wealth. Now it was all crumbling. Ms. Sterling, this is David Chen from Wellington Ventures. The voice on the phone was clinical, detached. We're withdrawing our $40 million investment, effective immediately. Victoria's hand trembled as she ended the call. The numbers on her screen told a devastating story. Richard Blackstone, her co-founder, and the man she trusted with everything, had been systematically betraying her for months. Client data stolen, algorithms compromised, her life's work sold to competitors piece by piece. The irony wasn't lost on her. Victoria Sterling, the woman who graced Forbes covers for revolutionizing financial technology, couldn't see the betrayal happening in her own company. Maybe it was because of the migraines that had been getting worse lately, the ones that made her vision blur during crucial presentations, or the way her hands sometimes shook when she was stressed. A symptom her doctor insisted was just anxiety, but felt like something deeper, something she couldn't control. She pressed her palm against the cold window, Chicago's lights blurring through unshed tears. In 72 hours, the board would meet to decide Morning Rise's fate. Without new investors, everything she'd built would belong to Richard and his corporate vultures. What Victoria didn't know was that 40 floors below, a man in a security guard uniform was finishing his rounds, a man whose hidden expertise would soon become her salvation. Daniel Hayes checked his watch. 3:15 a.m. The graveyard shift at Willis Tower paid enough to cover rent on their tiny Lincoln Park apartment and Emma's school expenses. But it came at a cost that had nothing to do with money. 3 years ago, Dr. Daniel Hayes had been one of Chicago's most promising cardiac surgeons. His colleagues at Northwestern Memorial spoke of his innovative techniques, his steady hands that could repair the most complex heart defects. That man felt like a stranger now. The transformation began with Sarah's diagnosis. Glioblastoma, the kind of brain cancer that laughs at medical degrees in prestigious hospitals. Daniel had taken leave from his residency to become a full-time caregiver, watching helplessly as medical bills devoured their savings like a relentless cancer of their own. $2.3 million. That's what it cost to fight the impossible. Their Oak Park house, gone. Sarah's engagement ring, his medical textbooks, her grandmother's jewelry, all sacrificed to pay for treatments that insurance deemed experimental. In the end, Sarah died anyway, leaving behind 7-year-old Emma and a broken man who'd lost faith in the very systems he'd once served. "Daddy, did you remember to eat dinner?" Emma had asked earlier, her gap-toothed smile lighting up their cramped apartment. At 7, she possessed an intelligence that sometimes frightened Daniel. She understood too much, worried about things no child should carry. "I'll grab something at work, sweetheart." Emma had wrapped her small arms around his waist. "Mommy's watching from heaven, making sure you take care of yourself, right?" The memory tightened Daniel's chest as he made his rounds. Emma deserved so much more than their hand-me-down furniture and dollar store dinners. She deserved the life he'd once been able to provide, before pride and circumstances reduced him to shadows and night shifts. The elevator emergency alarm shattered his thoughts at 3:22 a.m. Victoria had been reaching for her purse when the lights died. The elevator lurched to a stop between floors 35 and 36, suspended in the building's steel skeleton like a trapped bird. Emergency lighting bathed everything in hellish red, transforming her familiar corporate world into something alien and menacing. The walls pressed closer with each heartbeat, her chest constricted, breathing becoming shallow and rapid. This wasn't simple claustrophobia. Victoria Sterling had conquered boardrooms full of hostile investors without breaking a sweat. This was something deeper, more primal, the sensation of complete helplessness, of systems failing when she needed them most. Her phone showed no signal. The emergency button yielded only static. As her heart hammered against her ribs, a terrifying thought crept in. What if this was how Richard planned to finish her? What if even the building's safety systems had been compromised? Then the intercom crackled to life. "This is building security. Can you hear me?" The voice was calm, professional, with an undertone of genuine concern that cut through her panic. "I'm trapped," Victoria managed, pressing the emergency button with shaking fingers. "Elevator 7, between 35 and 36. I'm Daniel. I'm coming to get you out. Are you injured?" "No, I can't breathe properly. Something's wrong." There was a pause, then the voice returned, somehow closer, more intimate. "I need you to sit down if you can. Put your back against the wall and focus on my voice." Victoria slid down until she was sitting on the elevator floor, her Armani dress bunching around her knees. The voice continued, steady and sure. "Now breathe with me. 4 counts in through your nose. Hold for 4. Out through your mouth for 6. Can you do that for me?" As she followed the instructions, Victoria noticed something that cut through her panic. The cadence, the medical terminology he used without thinking. This wasn't standard security training. This was clinical expertise, delivered with the kind of confidence that came from years of life and death decisions. "Good, that's perfect. Keep going." The voice paused. "Can you tell me if you have any history of cardiac issues? Any medications I should know about?" Victoria's breath caught. How had he known to ask about heart problems when she'd only mentioned difficulty breathing? "How did you... Are you a doctor?" Another pause, longer this time. She could almost hear him calculating what to reveal. "I'm going to get you out of here safely. Just keep breathing with me, okay?" Twist number 1, the hidden expertise. 25 minutes later, the elevator doors opened to reveal Daniel Hayes, tall, broad-shouldered, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that held depths of knowledge she couldn't place. He helped Victoria to her feet with the gentle certainty of someone who'd done this countless times before. "You're okay," he said softly, his hand steady as he checked her pulse with practiced efficiency. "Everything's going to be okay." But as Victoria looked into his face, studying the way he'd assessed her condition without seeming to, she knew with absolute certainty that Daniel Hayes was hiding something profound. The next morning, Victoria sat in her office reviewing security footage from the night before. She'd requested Daniel's employment file, but what she found only deepened the mystery. Basic background check, solid references, nothing unusual. Yet the man who'd guided her through a panic attack possessed medical knowledge that went far beyond first aid certification. She'd built her fortune on reading people, on spotting deceptions that could cost millions. But Daniel Hayes was an enigma wrapped in a security guard uniform, and Victoria Sterling had never been one to leave mysteries unsolved. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Sterling, there's a little girl here to see you. Says her father works in the building." Victoria frowned. It was Saturday morning. She'd come in early for crisis management, not expecting visitors. "Send her up." Emma Hayes exploded into Victoria's office like a tiny hurricane of curiosity and confidence. She wore a bright pink backpack nearly as big as she was, her father trailing behind with an expression of mortified apology. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Sterling. Emma, you can't just..." "It's fine," Victoria found herself saying, studying the little girl who was now examining the financial charts scattered across her conference table. Emma's eyes, bright and inquisitive, moved across the declining projections with startling focus. Daddy, this lady's numbers look really sad, Emma announced, pointing at the stock charts. Like when you showed me your surgery success rates, but backwards. These show people getting sicker instead of better. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Daniel's face went completely pale. Emma, we need to go. Now! But Victoria was already moving closer, her pulse quickening with recognition. Surgery success rates? Emma looked between the two adults with the innocent wisdom children sometimes possessed. Daddy used to fix people's hearts when they were broken. Really broken. Like when the heart stops working right. He showed me all his charts about how many people he helped get better. The silence stretched between them, heavy with revelation and possibility. Daniel's carefully constructed new identity was unraveling in real time, exposed by his 7-year-old daughter's honest observations. "You're Dr. Daniel Hayes," Victoria said quietly, pieces clicking into place. "Northwestern Memorial, cardiac surgery." Daniel's shoulders sagged in defeat. "Former Dr. Hayes, that life ended 3 years ago." Emma tugged at Victoria's sleeve with the fearlessness of childhood. "Daddy doesn't like to talk about the hospital days. It makes him remember when Mommy got sick and the mean insurance people wouldn't help her." Victoria's chest tightened as understanding flooded through her. "Medical debt. 2.3 million, Daniel said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything we had, everything we could borrow, it wasn't enough." His voice cracked. "It's never enough when someone you love is dying." The irony struck Victoria like a physical blow. Her algorithms helped families build wealth, but they were powerless against the medical bankruptcies that destroyed lives like Daniel's. She'd been so focused on creating financial solutions that she'd forgotten the human cost of systematic failures. "Why security work?" she asked gently. "Flexible schedule," Daniel replied, his hand resting protectively on Emma's shoulder. "I can be home when she gets out of school. I can take her to doctor's appointments, help with homework. I can be the parent she needs, even if I can't give her the life she deserves." Emma looked up at Victoria with earnest eyes. "Daddy's still the smartest person in the whole world. He could fix your sad numbers if you asked really nicely." That evening, Victoria did something unprecedented. She invited guests to her penthouse apartment. The space reflected her success, but not her soul. Minimalist furniture, abstract art, a kitchen that looked more like a museum display than a place where food was actually prepared. "I should confess," Victoria said, opening her sub-zero refrigerator to reveal its sparse contents. "I don't actually cook. There's a place called Alinea that delivers when I need to impress people." Daniel smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Emma's easy to impress. She'd be thrilled with mac and cheese from a box. I don't have mac and cheese. Lucky thing I stopped at the grocery store." Daniel produced a bag from behind his back. "Classic comfort food, coming right up." As Daniel worked in her pristine kitchen, Victoria watched him transform the sterile space into something warm and lived in. Emma sat at the marble counter, chattering about her day while helping grate cheese. The scene was so domestic, so foreign to Victoria's controlled world, that she felt something shift inside her chest. Muscles she hadn't realized were permanently tense, beginning to relax. "Tell me about Sarah," Victoria said quietly as they sat down to dinner. Daniel's hand stilled on his fork. Emma looked between them with the intuitive understanding children developed about adult grief. "She was a teacher," Daniel began slowly. "3rd grade. She had this gift for making every kid feel special, especially the ones other teachers had given up on. When she got diagnosed," he paused, gathering himself, "glioblastoma, stage 4, the kind that has a 6-month prognosis if you're lucky. Daddy sold everything to pay for Mommy's medicine," Emma added matter-of-factly, her 7-year-old directness cutting straight to the heart of things. "Even Grandpa's watch in his car, but the cancer was stronger than all the doctors." Victoria's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. The worst part wasn't losing her, Daniel continued, his voice barely above a whisper. It was watching the system fail her. 18 months of experimental treatments, clinical trials, everything insurance wouldn't cover because they were investigational. I spent 12 years learning to save lives, and when it mattered most, I couldn't save the one person who meant everything to me. Is that why you left medicine? Daniel nodded slowly. I lost faith in the system, in myself. How could I go back to saving strangers when I'd failed the person I love most? Victoria set down her fork, her appetite vanishing. Her entire career had been built on the belief that smart algorithms and efficient markets could solve problems. But sitting across from Daniel and Emma, she saw the human cost of systematic failures, the brilliant surgeon reduced to minimum wage work, the gifted child living in poverty because her family had dared to fight for a mother's life. What if I told you there was a way to fix the system that failed Sarah? Victoria said suddenly. What if we could use your medical expertise to heal financial systems the way you used to heal hearts? Daniel looked at her skeptically. Victoria, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not that man anymore. That person died with Sarah. Emma reached across the table and took her father's hand in both of hers. Mommy used to say that angels help people even after they go to heaven. Maybe you could help people differently now, but still help them. The words hung in the air between them, carried by innocent wisdom that cut straight through adult cynicism. Before either could respond, Victoria's phone buzzed with an emergency alert that made her blood run cold. What is it? Daniel asked, seeing her expression change. Victoria showed him the screen. Richard Blackstone just called an emergency board meeting. Wednesday morning, 48 hours from now. Emma looked confused. Who's Richard? Someone who wants to destroy everything Victoria built, Daniel said, his protective instincts kicking in as he watched Victoria's hands begin to tremble. Monday morning brought a devastating leak to TechCrunch that painted Morning Rise Capital as a company in freefall. Serious concerns about algorithmic reliability and executive leadership, the article claimed, quoting anonymous sources that Victoria knew could only be Richard himself. She stood in her office, staring out at the Chicago skyline, when Daniel appeared in her doorway. He was out of uniform, wearing a simple button-down and jeans, looking more like the doctor he used to be than the security guard he'd become. I've been thinking about what you said, he began, about fixing systems. The board meets Wednesday morning. If I can't prove Richard's been sabotaging the company, Morning Rise is finished. 8 years of work, thousands of families depending on our platform, gone. Show me everything. For the next 8 hours, Daniel studied transaction logs, algorithmic patterns, and financial records that told the story of Richard's systematic betrayal. His medical background had trained him to see patterns others missed, to diagnose problems through careful analysis of symptoms that seemed unrelated. Victoria watched in amazement as the brilliant physician emerged from beneath the broken man's facade. His questions were surgical in their precision, his analysis methodical and devastating. It's elegant, Daniel said finally, leaning back in his chair. Clinically elegant. He didn't just steal your algorithms. He's been introducing systematic errors into the code. Small ones at first, undetectable unless you knew what to look for. Creating doubt about our reliability. Exactly. Like introducing a slow-acting poison into a patient's bloodstream. By the time symptoms appear, the damage is already extensive. Daniel highlighted a series of transactions, but he made one critical mistake. These patterns are too perfect, too systematic. In medicine, we call it pathognomonic, a symptom so specific to a disease that it confirms the diagnosis. Victoria felt hope flicker for the first time in days. You can prove the sabotage was deliberate? Better than that, Daniel said, pulling up another screen, his fingers moving with surgical precision. I can show you exactly when he did it, how he did it, and who he's been working with. But more importantly, he turned to face her, and Victoria saw steel in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I can show you how to not just fix it, but make the system stronger than it ever was. Daniel's analysis revealed the true scope of Richard's betrayal. He hadn't just stolen intellectual property, he'd been short-selling Morning Rise stock while feeding competitors inside information. It was corporate espionage on a massive scale, designed to bankrupt the company so Richard could buy it back for pennies on the dollar. "We have 36 hours, Victoria said, looking at the evidence spread across her conference table. "How do we stop him?" Daniel stood, and for the first time since Sarah's death, he looked like a man with purpose. In surgery, when you find a malignant tumor, you don't just remove it. You make sure you get every cell, every trace, so it can never come back. What are you saying? I'm saying we don't just expose Richard. We destroy his entire network. Every co-conspirator, every illegal transaction, every securities violation. We make sure this never happens to another company, another family, another dream. Emma, who'd been quietly coloring in the corner, looked up from her artwork. "Are you going back to being a doctor, Daddy? A different kind of doctor?" Daniel knelt down to his daughter's level, smoothing her hair with gentle hands. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe I'm ready to start healing things again." Wednesday morning dawned cold and gray. Lake Michigan churning under storm clouds that seemed to mirror the tension building in the Willis Tower boardroom. The Morning Rise Board of Directors gathered on the 47th floor, 12 people who would decide whether Victoria Sterling's life work would survive or perish. Richard Blackstone sat at the far end of the polished conference table, his expression carefully controlled but confident. He'd spent months planting seeds of doubt about Victoria's leadership, her technical competence, her ability to guide the company through troubled waters. Today would be his triumph. What he hadn't anticipated was the man sitting beside Victoria. "Before we begin," Victoria announced, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what was at stake, "I'd like to introduce Dr. Daniel Hayes, our new Chief Technology Officer and Head of Ethical Financial Systems." Richard's composure cracked slightly. "I wasn't aware we were bringing in outside consultants for internal matters." "Dr. Hayes isn't outside," Victoria replied smoothly. "He's been observing our systems from a unique vantage point. As both a physician and a data analyst, he's uniquely qualified to diagnose what's been making our company sick." Daniel stood, connecting his laptop to the presentation system with movements that were precise, confident, surgical. When he spoke, it was with the authority of a man who'd spent years making life and death decisions. "In medicine," he began, his voice filling the room, "we sometimes encounter patients whose symptoms don't match their reported lifestyle or medical history. When that happens, it's often a sign of external interference. Poisoning, sabotage, deliberate harm designed to mimic natural illness." The room fell silent, every board member leaning forward. "Morning Rise Capital has been systematically poisoned," Daniel continued, pulling up a complex visualization that filled the wall-mounted screen. "These charts show algorithmic performance over the past 18 months. Notice the degradation patterns. They appear random but follow mathematical precision that's impossible to achieve naturally." Richard shifted in his seat. "This is highly speculative." "Actually, it's forensic evidence," Daniel interrupted, his surgeon's confidence taking complete control of the room. "Every one of these anomalies can be traced to specific login sessions, specific code modifications, specific times and locations, the digital equivalent of fingerprints at a crime scene." For the next 40 minutes, Daniel systematically dismantled Richard's conspiracy with the same precision he'd once used to repair damaged hearts. He showed not just the sabotage, but the entire network: shell companies, offshore accounts, coordinated short-selling schemes that violated a dozen federal laws. "The question," Victoria said, standing beside Daniel as the weight of evidence filled the room, isn't whether Morning Rise can survive this betrayal. It's whether we can emerge stronger. Dr. Hayes has shown us not just how to heal our systems, but how to make them more ethical, more secure, more aligned with our original mission. Board member Patricia Chen raised her hand, her voice shaky with the implications of what they just learned. What guarantee do we have that this won't happen again? Victoria and Daniel exchanged a look that spoke of shared purpose and newfound partnership. Because we're implementing something revolutionary, Victoria announced, the Sarah Hayes Protocol, a new ethical framework that puts human impact at the center of every financial decision we make. No more algorithms that prioritize profit over people. No more systems that work for the wealthy while failing families like Dr. Hayes's. Richard stood abruptly, his carefully maintained facade finally cracking. This is absurd. You're destroying a profitable company over conspiracy theories and emotional manipulation. Mr. Blackstone, Victoria said quietly, her voice cutting through his bluster like steel. The Securities and Exchange Commission is waiting in the lobby. Your trading records, your communications with competitors, your attempts to manipulate our stock price, it's all documented. Corporate espionage and securities fraud are federal crimes. As building security escorted Richard from the boardroom, his co-conspirators revealed and his criminal network exposed, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not victory exactly, but justice. The restoration of faith in systems that had seemed irreparably broken. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the same conference room where her world had nearly ended, but everything had transformed. The sterile corporate environment had been softened with family photos, Emma's artwork, and images from the Sarah Hayes Medical Family Fund, the charitable foundation that ensured no family would face Sarah's choice between medical care and financial survival. Daniel entered carrying his tablet and a cup of coffee, no longer the broken security guard or even just the confident doctor, but something new, a man who'd learned to channel his healing gifts into systemic change rather than individual surgeries. Emma skipped behind him, her pink backpack replaced with a small briefcase Victoria had given her for very important board meetings. The quarterly numbers are in, Daniel announced, setting down his tablet with satisfaction. We didn't just recover from Richard's sabotage, we exceeded all projections by 40%. More importantly, the Sarah Hayes Protocol has prevented medical bankruptcy for 16 families this quarter alone. Emma climbed into Victoria's chair, spinning it in delighted circles. Daddy says you're going to marry him and officially become my second mom. Both adults turned bright red as Emma's innocent directness filled the room. Emma, we discussed private versus public conversations, Daniel started, but his daughter was undeterred. You said you love Victoria, and she said she loves you. And when grown-ups love each other and want to take care of each other forever, they get married. That's how families work. Emma stopped spinning to fix them both with 7-year-old logic. Plus, if Victoria becomes my mom officially, then I'll have 2 parents again, and we can get a bigger apartment with a real kitchen for family dinners. Victoria knelt to Emma's eye level, her heart full to bursting. Would you like that, sweetheart? Having me as your mom? Emma threw her small arms around Victoria's neck with the fierce joy of a child who'd learned to trust in new beginnings. I asked Mommy's angel about it in my prayers, and I think she wants Daddy to be happy again. You make him smile the way he used to smile in the pictures from before I was born. Daniel cleared his throat, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket with hands that shook only slightly. I was planning to do this more romantically, but Emma has a point about timing. Daddy practiced his speech in the bathroom mirror for 3 days, Emma whispered loudly. It was very beautiful, but also very long. Victoria laughed through sudden tears as Daniel dropped to one knee in their conference room, surrounded by the evidence of their shared mission to heal broken systems and broken hearts. Victoria Sterling, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You saved me when I thought salvation was impossible. You showed me that healing doesn't always require a scalpel. Sometimes it requires algorithms and courage, and the faith to rebuild something better than what came before. He opened the box to reveal a simple solitaire, beautiful in its elegant simplicity. Will you marry me? Will you help me raise the most brilliant, opinionated 7-year-old in Chicago? Will you build a life with us that honors both our past and our future? Yes, Victoria whispered, then louder as joy filled her voice. Yes, absolutely yes to all of it. As Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma cheered and immediately began planning their wedding with characteristic thoroughness. Victoria looked around the room that had once represented only professional ambition and saw something entirely different. The foundation for a family she'd never known she wanted, built on love, shared purpose, and the revolutionary idea that broken things could be made stronger. The wedding took place 4 months later in the rooftop garden of Willis Tower, Chicago sprawling majestically below them in the golden light of late afternoon. It was intimate but perfect. Daniel's mother, close friends, the Morning Rise team that had become family, and Emma serving as both flower girl and ring bearer, because, as she informed everyone, I'm the most important person here besides the bride and groom. During the ceremony, as Victoria and Daniel exchanged vows they'd written together, Victoria reflected on the woman she'd been just 1 year ago. Successful but lonely, ambitious but hollow, brilliant but blind to what truly mattered. I choose you, she said, looking into Daniel's eyes with absolute certainty. Not because you complete me, but because you challenge me to be better. I choose your incredible daughter, who taught me that wisdom comes in unexpected packages. I choose this family we're creating, built on honesty, compassion, and the belief that broken doesn't mean worthless. Daniel's vows were simpler but no less profound. I choose hope over fear, building over hiding, love over safety. I choose you, Victoria, in the future we'll create together. I choose to believe in healing again. As they kissed, sealing their promise to each other, Emma shouted, "Finally!" loud enough to make the entire gathering laugh. Later, as the reception wound down and Chicago glittered below them, like a constellation of possibilities, Victoria found herself standing at the same window, where she'd once contemplated losing everything. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman in Detroit whose family had been saved from medical bankruptcy by the Sarah Hayes Protocol. It was one of hundreds they'd received, each one a reminder that their love story had created ripples far beyond their own hearts. Daniel appeared beside her, Emma asleep in his arms after a day of celebration and pure joy. Any regrets? He asked softly. Victoria smiled, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from Emma's peaceful face. About marrying a former security guard with a precocious 7-year-old and strong opinions about social justice? That's us. None whatsoever. You both taught me that the most valuable things in life are the ones that can't be quantified in spreadsheets. Victoria leaned against Daniel's shoulder, feeling truly at peace for the first time in her adult life. I spent years building an empire in glass and steel. Turns out what I really needed was a home. As they headed inside to begin their new life together, a family forged from loss, strengthened by struggle, and bound by the kind of love that chooses to stay when everything else falls apart, Victoria knew that sometimes the greatest success stories begin with the courage to admit you need saving. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, salvation comes disguised as a night security guard with gentle hands and a daughter wise beyond her years. The empire Victoria had built in corporate towers paled in comparison to the home she'd found in the hearts of people brave enough to love her exactly as she was, brilliant, flawed, and finally completely whole. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from conquering others, but from having the courage to let someone save you in return. True success isn't measured in market caps or profit margins. It's measured in the lives you touch, the systems you heal, and the love you choose to build each day.